Michael Luciano loved his restaurant, Lano's Bistro. It was his pride and joy, the heart of his life. Every dish was crafted with precision, every meal an experience. When customers sat down at one of his tables, they weren't just getting food, they were getting a piece of his passion, his art. For years, Lano's Bistro had been the place where flavors told stories, where the ambience was as much a part of the dining experience as the food itself. But lately, something felt off. The reviews were still glowing. Sales were steady. His staff, loyal and hardworking, seemed content. But Michael couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Maybe it was the monotony of the daily grind. Maybe it was the way the kitchen had lost its edge. Or maybe it was the way the customers, once eager for a seat at his tables, were starting to seem more like strangers. Despite the outward success, Michael felt disconnected from what had made Lano's Bistro so special in the first place. He wondered if the true essence of the restaurant had slipped away from him, unnoticed and unacknowledged. That nagging feeling crept in whenever he stepped into the kitchen, when he watched his chefs work with the same robotic motions they'd had for years. He needed to figure out what had gone wrong, to reconnect with his passion. But how? Then it hit him. The last time he'd felt this lost, he'd done something drastic, something that always helped him find clarity. He'd gone undercover. But this time, he wouldn't just be a waiter or chef. He would go as a regular customer. He needed to see the restaurant through the eyes of the people who visited it, to experience it the way they did. Maybe then he could figure out what was missing. On a rainy Tuesday evening, Michael donned a hoodie, jeans, and a baseball cap, hoping to blend in unnoticed. He walked into Lano's Bistro with the same sense of purpose he had on opening nights, but this time, he wasn't there as the proud owner. He was just another face in the crowd. The atmosphere was just as it always was, electric, bustling with energy. The sound of clinking glasses, the hum of conversation, the sizzling of food being plated. It all felt familiar, like a comforting embrace. But something was different. Michael felt like an outsider in his own restaurant. He slipped into a booth in the back corner, trying to remain unnoticed, hoping to observe without drawing attention. A waitress approached, her smile practiced and professional. "Good evening, sir. What can I get for you to drink?" "Water's fine," Michael replied, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Take your time with the menu," she said, flashing a quick smile before walking away. Michael looked around, observing the tables, the servers, the familiar rhythms of the place. As he scanned the room, his eyes fell on two boys sitting at a booth behind him. They were talking in hushed tones, clearly trying to keep their conversation private. Michael couldn't help but overhear. "Do you think we'll even see him tonight?" one of the boys whispered. "Who are they talking about?" Michael wondered. His curiosity piqued. The second boy responded, his voice sharp. "Mom said he comes here all the time. She said he wouldn't hide. It's his fault everything went wrong." Michael's chest tightened. The word struck him like a cold wave, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something about this conversation was personal. His mind raced, trying to piece together what he was hearing. This wasn't just some random chat between two kids. There was something deeper here. The first boy spoke again, his voice full of bitterness. "She said if it weren't for him, we wouldn't be living like this." The words cut through Michael like a knife, and a cold shiver ran down his spine. What were they talking about? Who were they talking about? Their voices were filled with anger, and Michael's instincts told him it had something to do with him. The waitress returned with his water, pulling Michael's attention briefly away from the conversation. But as she walked away, he leaned back in his seat, trying to listen without being obvious. The two boys were still talking. "I don't know if we'll find him tonight," the first boy murmured. "We won't get caught," the second boy said, his voice filled with certainty. "We just need to figure out who he is." Michael's heart began to race. Who were they looking for? He needed to know more. He couldn't just ignore this. The first boy's voice trembled as he spoke again. "Here's the one who took everything from her." The second boy added, almost quietly, She said he took what was hers and made sure no one would hire her again. Michael's stomach churned. Those words, their bitterness, their anger, felt like a punch to the gut. It was clear now that the boys were talking about him. But why? What had he done to them, to their family? His mind spun with questions he had no answers to. The waitress returned, but Michael barely registered her presence. He had to understand more. He couldn't sit still any longer. Taking a deep breath, he slowly stood up, adjusting his hoodie and baseball cap to make sure he wasn't recognized. He walked casually toward the counter near the kitchen, trying to get a better view of the boys without being seen. As he passed the counter, he asked the waitress, "Do those boys come here often?" The waitress glanced over her shoulder. "I don't think so." "Why? Are they bothering you?" "No," Michael replied quickly, trying to sound casual. "Just curious." The waitress shrugged and walked away, but Michael's mind was racing even faster now. These boys weren't just regular customers. They had a personal vendetta against him. But why? What had he done? He made a decision. He had to know who they were. He had to confront them, figure out what was going on. Turning back toward their booth, Michael walked over. The two boys froze when he approached. Their eyes widened in recognition, but there was no fear, only anger. "Hey," Michael said, trying to sound calm. "Are you two okay? You seem a little uneasy." The boy in the hoodie glared at him, his voice cold. "We're fine." Michael nodded, not pressing further, but continuing to keep the conversation going. "I couldn't help but overhear. Are you looking for someone?" The second boy exchanged a nervous glance with the first. "Why do you care?" the boy in the hoodie asked suspiciously. Michael hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Well, if you're looking for someone, I might be able to help." The first boy's eyes narrowed. "Wait a second," he said slowly, eyeing Michael carefully. "You look familiar." Michael gave a small laugh. "A lot of people say that. Must have one of those faces." "No," the boy insisted, his voice suddenly serious. "You're him. You're Michael Luciano." Michael froze. The weight of the words hit him like a punch to the stomach. There was no denying it now. They knew who he was. "Yes," Michael said quietly, "I'm Michael Luciano. But how do you know who I am?" The boy in the hoodie stared at him, his face twisted with anger. "Because of what you did to our mom." Michael felt his world shift. The words hit him hard, and for a moment, he could barely process them. "Your mom," the first boy said bitterly, "Angela Carter, and had contributed so much to the restaurant's early success. But she had left abruptly, without a word, and Michael had never understood why. "Angela Carter?" Michael repeated, his voice trembling. "What happened to her?" The second boy spoke, his voice filled with rage. "She gave everything to your restaurant. And what did you do? You stole from her. You took her recipes. You made sure no one would hire her again after she left." The words crashed into Michael's chest. He didn't know what to say. How had things gone so wrong? "Why would she say that?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Because it's the truth," the first boy shouted. "You ruined her life. You ruined ours." The second boy spoke more quietly, his words heavy with pain. "She said you were jealous. You couldn't stand the idea of someone else getting credit." Michael felt like the ground had just been ripped from beneath him. He had no idea that Angela had felt this way. He remembered her talent, her creativity, but somewhere along the way, something had gone horribly wrong. He had hurt her, and now her sons were confronting him about it. "I need to talk to your mom," Michael said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "If what you're saying is true, I need to hear from her." The boys exchanged weary glances. Finally, the boy in the hoodie spoke, his voice quieter now. "She's not here right now. But if you really want to know the truth, you'll have to come see us." Michael nodded, his mind racing. He needed to find Angela. He needed to understand what had happened, what he had done to her. And he had to make things right. As he left the booth, his thoughts were clearer than they had been in years. It wasn't just about Lano's Bistro anymore. It was about redemption. It was about facing the mistakes of the past and taking responsibility. Michael knew he had a long road ahead of him, but he was determined to walk it. He had taken something from Angela, and now he had to return it. Starting with her sons, Michael stood outside the cafe, staring at the door, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. He had come this far. Confronting the boys, those sons of Angela Carter, had been just the beginning. Now, he had to face Angela herself. The past few days had been filled with questions, doubt, and regret. But he knew one thing for sure. If he wanted to make things right, he had to confront the truth, no matter how painful. Inside the cafe, Angela was already waiting. Michael could feel the weight of the years between them, the silence that had stretched for so long. He hadn't seen her since she left the bistro so many years ago. She had been one of the original chefs, one of the most talented, and one of the hardest workers he had ever known. But one day, without any warning, she had disappeared. No explanation, just gone. And now, standing at the edge of this confrontation, Michael wasn't sure what he would find. He opened the door and stepped inside. The scent of coffee and baked goods hit him, but it wasn't enough to calm the tension in his chest. He scanned the room and spotted Angela sitting at a small table near the window. She looked exactly the same, yet different, older, hardened. But there was something in her eyes that hadn't changed, a fire and anger, and maybe even a trace of the disappointment he had caused. Angela didn't look up when he approached. She was staring out the window, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. Michael stood there for a moment, unsure of how to begin, but there was no more avoiding it. He had come this far, and now it was time to face the music. "Angela," he said, his voice soft but steady. She didn't respond immediately. She just kept staring out the window, as if lost in her own thoughts. Michael took a deep breath, pushing through the rising anxiety in his chest. "I know you've been angry with me," he continued, his voice steady, but carrying the weight of years of guilt. "I know I made mistakes, but I'm here because I need to understand what happened. Why you left, why you never came back, and why you told your sons everything you did." Angela's eyes flicked to him, but there was no warmth in her gaze, just cold, hard anger. "So, you want answers now?" she asked, her voice sharp, cutting through the silence like a knife. Michael nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Yes, I need them. I'm not here to argue. I just need to know the truth." Angela sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. For a brief moment, Michael saw the woman he had once known, the passionate chef who had poured her heart into every dish, every recipe. But that woman was buried deep beneath the layers of bitterness, pain, and anger she had built up over the years. "You think you're the only one who's been hurt, Michael?" she said, her voice cracking slightly. "You think I don't remember everything that happened? The hours I spent in that kitchen, giving everything to your restaurant while you took credit for it all. It was never about the food for you, was it? It was about you, about your success. I was just a stepping stone for you." Michael felt the sting of her words, but he didn't back down. "I never meant for that to happen, Angela. I didn't see it. I was so focused on the bistro, on making it successful, that I didn't see what was right in front of me. I didn't see you." She shook her head, her eyes filled with pain. "Of course you didn't. You were too busy with your vision of success to notice how much it was costing everyone around you." She paused, taking a sip of her coffee before adding, "You took my recipes. You used my ideas. And you turned it all into your own success. And when I tried to leave, you made sure I had no place left to go. No one would hire me after that. I couldn't even work in a kitchen anymore." The words hit Michael like a punch to the gut. He had never realized the extent of the damage he had caused. He had taken so much, and in return, he had left her with nothing. His mind flashed back to the early days, to when Angela had been the heart of the bistro's kitchen. He remembered her passion, her innovation. She had been the spark that had made the bistro's dishes stand out. But somewhere along the way, he had let his own ambitions blind him to her contributions. "I never thought it would go that far," Michael whispered, the weight of his regret sinking in. "I was just trying to keep the restaurant going. I thought if I could keep things running smoothly, everything would be okay. But I lost sight of everything that mattered." Angela's eyes softened for just a moment, and then her face hardened again. "It's too late for apologies, Michael. Too late for anything. You've already taken everything. But you want to make things right? Fine. You want to fix it? Start by fixing what you've done to my sons." The word stung, but Michael didn't flinch. He knew that facing her sons was the next step, the next part of the road to redemption. They had been angry at him, full of resentment and pain. And if he wanted to truly make amends, he had to show them and Angela that he was willing to do whatever it took. "If you'll let me." Angela's gaze remained cold. "I'm not sure you can fix this, Michael, but you're welcome to try." She stood up from the table, pushing her chair back with a sharp scrape against the floor. "But I warn you, be careful what you wish for. Not everything can be fixed." With that, she turned and walked toward the door, leaving Michael standing in the cafe, his thoughts a chaotic mix of guilt, determination, and uncertainty. He knew she was right. Not everything could be fixed, but he had to try. As he stood there, watching her leave, a deep sense of resolve settled over him. He had no idea how he was going to win back the trust he had lost, but he had to start somewhere. It was time to face her sons. It was time to face the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The road to redemption had just begun. The next morning, Michael stood outside a modest two-story house on the outskirts of the city. The address Angela had given him the day before rang in his head like an ominous clock ticking down. Her sons, those two boys whose anger had been so raw, had invited him here to confront him. And now, standing on their doorstep, Michael couldn't help but feel a knot tighten in his stomach. He had spent the night replaying the conversation with Angela in his mind, dissecting every word, every look, trying to find some clue about how he could begin to make amends. But all he had was her cold dismissal and the bitter anger of her children. They thought he had ruined their lives, and in a way, he knew they were right. He had done things, taken things, that no one could simply forgive overnight. The door creaked open before he had the chance to knock, and the boy in the hoodie from the bistro, one of Angela's sons, stood before him, his face a mask of distrust and bitterness. "You came," the boy said, his tone flat but with an edge of hostility. "I didn't think you would." Michael swallowed hard. "I'm here to talk, to fix this." The boy just stared at him, his eyes narrowing, as if trying to figure out whether Michael was sincere or just another person looking to dodge responsibility. Finally, he stepped aside, motioning for Michael to enter. The inside of the house was far humbler than the lavish atmosphere of the bistro. Simple furniture, worn but clean, filled the rooms, a stark contrast to the upscale surroundings Michael was used to. There was a sense of quiet, of something broken but not yet forgotten. Angela had spent years here, raising her sons, trying to rebuild a life after what Michael had taken from her. Michael's eyes were drawn to a photo on the wall as he passed. Angela smiling with her two boys, their faces full of hope, of promise. And Michael had taken that away from them. "Where's your brother?" Michael asked, trying to break the silence as he followed the boy into the living room. "He's upstairs," the boy replied shortly, sinking onto the couch and crossing his arms. "He didn't want to meet you, but I figured we'd all have to face you sooner or later." Michael nodded, trying to suppress the guilt that swelled in his chest. He had no idea what kind of anger these boys had built up over the years. They were just kids when their mother had left the bistro, when everything had fallen apart. What had they been through? A few moments later, the second boy came downstairs. He was taller, more composed, but the fury in his eyes was undeniable. He walked into the room slowly, his gaze locked onto Michael as if sizing him up, as if trying to figure out how much of this man's guilt was real. Michael Luciano, he said, his voice low, almost mocking. "The man who destroyed our mother's career, who destroyed our lives." Michael felt the sting of those words, but he didn't flinch. He couldn't. Not now. "I never meant to hurt you or your mother," Michael said quietly. "I've made mistakes, huge mistakes, but I'm here to face them. I want to fix this. I want to make things right." The boy snorted, rolling his eyes. "Fix it? You can't fix years of damage with a few words." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Michael replied, "but I'm asking for the chance to show you that I'm not the man you think I am, that I wasn't the villain in your mother's life. I know I hurt her. I know I hurt both of you. But I need to understand how to fix what I've broken." The room was heavy with silence. The two boys exchanged a glance, then sat down on the couch, their expressions hard. Michael took a seat across from them, his heart pounding in his chest. "We didn't ask for your apology," the first boy said, his voice thick with contempt. "We didn't ask for you to come here. But you're here now, and you need to hear the truth." Michael nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I'm listening." The second boy leaned forward, his eyes locking onto Michael's. "You know what you did to our mom. You took everything from her. You took her talent, her passion, her recipes, and you turned it into your own success. You made her feel like she was nothing." Michael flinched at the words, the weight of their truth sinking in. He remembered Angela's passion, her creativity in the kitchen, but it had all been overshadowed by his need to control, to take credit. She had been the heart of Lano's bistro, and yet he had let his ego get in the way of seeing her as a partner, not just a tool for his own ambitions. "We heard the stories," the first boy continued, his voice trembling with emotion. "She told us everything. How you stole her recipes. How you made sure she couldn't work anywhere else after she left. How you made sure she had nothing left. You ruined her. And because of you, we've had nothing but struggle." Michael's breath caught in his throat. This was what it had all come to, the consequences of his selfishness, his blindness to the lives of those around him. Angela had lost everything because of him, and now her sons had carried that pain with them for years. "I never wanted that," Michael said quietly, his voice thick with regret. "But I can't change the past. All I can do now is make sure I don't keep making the same mistakes. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. If you'll let me." The second boy stood up suddenly, his face red with anger. "You think you can fix this? You think you can just come in here and say sorry and make everything better? It doesn't work like that. You can't just erase what you did. You don't get to walk away from this, Michael." "I know," Michael whispered. "I don't deserve to walk away. I'm not asking for you to forgive me right away, or to forget what I've done. But I will do whatever it takes to help your mom rebuild. I will do everything I can to make this right." The room was silent again. For what felt like an eternity, neither boy spoke. Michael's heart raced as he waited, unsure of what would come next, but knowing that he had already started down a path that was no longer about redemption for himself. It was about them, about Angela, about the sons she had raised, about the years he had stolen from all of them. Finally, the first boy spoke, his voice quieter now. "We don't know if you can fix anything, Michael, but we'll give you the chance to prove it. Not for you, but for Mom." And just like that, the weight in the room shifted. Michael knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, that nothing would ever be the same. But for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. He had taken everything, but maybe, just maybe, he could start to give it back. The man they had every right to hate. But now it was time to face Angela herself, to look her in the eye and confront the truth of everything he had taken from her. Angela's front door opened before Michael had the chance to knock, and there she stood. Time had not been kind to her. Her once vibrant eyes were now tinged with sorrow, the wrinkles around them deepening with the years of struggle. But even in her pain, there was a strength in her posture that made Michael feel small. "Come in," she said, her voice sharp but not unwelcoming. It was clear she hadn't forgiven him, but she wasn't pushing him away either. Michael stepped inside, feeling the weight of the past settle on his shoulders. The house smelled of coffee and dust, simple, lived in, like nothing had changed. Angela led him to the living room where her son sat, silent, watching him carefully. The air was thick with tension. Michael's chest tightened as he took a seat, the gravity of the situation sinking in. "I'm here because I need to make things right," Michael began, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "I know that saying sorry doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I understand what I've done. I've stolen from you, Angela. I've taken things that were never mine to take, and I can't take them back. But I want to try to fix this." Angela didn't respond immediately. She studied him, her gaze piercing, as if she were measuring his sincerity. Her son sat stiffly, their anger still present, but tempered by the promise of something Michael had given them, a glimpse of remorse. "You can't just undo what you did, Michael," Angela finally said, her voice thick with emotion. "What you took from me, it was everything. My career, my identity, my chance to be someone outside of the kitchen that you controlled. You didn't just steal recipes. You stole my future." Michael's stomach churned, the words slicing through him like a blade. He had never truly understood the depth of her sacrifice until now. Angela had given him the best of herself, and he had squandered it. "I know," he whispered. "I know, and I can never undo that. But I'm here to try, to do what I can to make it right. You've raised two incredible sons, Angela. I owe it to them, and to you, to fix what I've broken." She sat down across from him, her face unreadable. "And how exactly do you plan to fix this? Do you think that offering money or fame will somehow make up for the years you've taken from us?" "No," Michael said firmly. "I'm not here to offer you anything like that. I'm here to help you rebuild. I know it's not enough, but I can give you the resources, the connections you need. I've spent years building Lano's Bistro, but I see now it was all hollow. It was about me. I want to help you make something that's truly yours, something real." Angela's expression softened ever so slightly, but her eyes were still guarded. "You think you can fix this with money, with connections? What about trust, Michael? What about the years I lost?" Michael hesitated, searching for the right words. "I don't think I can fix everything, but I'm willing to help you get back what was stolen. If that means offering you a partnership, helping you open your own restaurant, I'll do it. I'll make sure people know who you are, what you've done. You deserve that." Angela was quiet for a long time, her gaze drifting from Michael to her sons, who watched her carefully. Finally, she nodded slowly. "I won't lie to you, Michael. I'm not sure I'll ever forgive you. But for the sake of my sons, for the sake of my own peace, I'll consider your offer. You'll have to prove yourself, though. Actions, not words." "I understand," Michael replied, a lump in his throat. "I'll do whatever it takes." As the conversation drifted into silence, Michael felt the weight of what had just happened. Angela wasn't ready to forgive him, and maybe she never would be. But the chance to prove himself, to do something right for once, was all he needed. The evening came to a close with Angela's quiet words echoing in his mind. "I'll consider it." It wasn't a promise. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a beginning, a crack in the wall that had been built between them over the years. As Michael stepped out of her house, he felt a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. This wasn't over. The road ahead was uncertain, and he knew the journey wouldn't be easy. He had caused irreparable damage, and no amount of money or promises would ever change that. But as he walked away, he realized something. This wasn't about redemption for him. It was about giving Angela and her sons a life they deserved, the life he had taken from them. He didn't know if they would ever fully forgive him, but he was determined to show them that he wasn't the man they thought he was. He could never take back the years he had stolen, but he would spend the rest of his life making things right. This was only the beginning of the hardest thing he would ever do, but for the first time in years, he felt like he was finally on the path to something real, something worth fighting for.